Watching these unethical journalists lie about Stellar Blade's absurd success, again, just proves the Matrix is running smoothly. This is now the top Steam Sony single-player game of all time, and by a massive margin. Players love this game, they absolutely love modding the game. Oh, and there goes the narrative behind why so many other games fail after they come out a year later on Steam. Looks like, if the game is good, people will still buy it if it comes out a year or two after release. And let's just list all the things that Stellar Blade does right, not by my standards, because my standards mean nothing to you. Perhaps a lesson you should learn when you try to moralize to others. No, journalists will be judging the game you campaigned against twice by your standards, which in fairness also mean nothing to you. Number 1, Eve is a strong, independent, intelligent female protagonist. Well, already we're off to a good start. Everything you could possibly want, and she is not even white. So a race you do not hate? My bad. She's Korean, which means by your logic she is white adjacent. Cannot win them all, that's a negative 50 credit score right there. 2. Stellar Blade is a single-player action game in a depleted genre. After listening to your cabal rail against all the multiplayer games and bemoan the loss of action, gameplay-focused single-player games, this should be the answer you were looking for. 3. It is not live service, considering you spend half your time talking about how live service is killing the industry and partly to blame for all the layoffs in it. You are getting everything you need from this game. 4. It has a massive cosmetic selection at launch, all of which was available in-game by playing the game. It has since had 2 $10 DLC, each which came with a dozen cosmetics, reasonable compared to many live service games where a single skin can be anything from $20 to $100. Wasn't one of you always complaining about $70 for blue guns in Valorant? 5. It has a very heavy gameplay focus. It is a mix of exploration that uses easy and fun to use exploration movement, and a tight parry and dodge based combat system that is best for duels, however, is still good and provides tools for taking on enemy packs. A hybrid of Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and of course, Dark Souls. Oh, right. You prefer narrative games where the most challenging part is walking forward. Still, gets you sometimes, doesn't it? 6. And it has a great story and characters. It's not too complex and meandering, it mostly keeps on track, it is easy to follow, it does not get in the way of the game itself, or force you to sit around half the time. It pushes you back out the door whenever you end up in town, back to the action, exactly what people want from an action game. And bonus point 7, the game is even modder friendly. The studio's Twitter has reposted fan art and fan mods. Journalists, you want fans to get angry at a studio that is being this gamer friendly? If this were Ubisoft, Nintendo, or Naughty Dog, these fan artists and modders would be getting copyright takedowns or lawyers at their doors. No, Shift Up does everything right to create a genuine, positive relationship with players, and this helps them stand out in a sea of corporate AAA studios that hate gamers, and their journalist dogs who hate gamers even more. So basically, this game does everything the journalists and audience were asking for most of the last decade. It avoids all the most hated things about live service, monetization, and games that are just replicating the current trend. If this game was made in a Western studio that gives these journalists access and the protagonists looked like they were from Concord, instead of getting a complete snub at the Game Awards, it would have been Game of the Year. Now, let's look at everything that Stellar Blade does wrong by the journalist standards. 1. Eve is beautiful. That's it. That is the one thing, and that was enough to get them to destroy it twice, or perhaps to be more accurate, that is why they had to destroy it. See, on the one hand, we have the fact that you can never please these people. This is a literal example of the fact that you can do 99 things in line with the religious cult's doctrine, but when number 100 is slightly out of line, they will whip up the lynch mob in a second. On the other hand, though, they have seen what is now hundreds of their entertainment projects between comics, movies, TV, and games all completely bomb. You've all seen over and over the list of the last 20 woke ideology-driven games that have under 1,000 players, put right next to games like Stellar Blade, Black Myth, Clair Obscur that see 100, 200, 1,000 times more players interested in those games. Games that have smaller budgets, smaller studios, and less time making games that destroy these AAA Goliaths that are bankrupting their industry, all to seal claps of mentally ill activists. And games like Stellar Blade enrage them even more, not in spite of, but because Stellar Blade does everything they have been asking for. But they do it in a way that gamers want. Fun gameplay, beautiful visuals, and positive social interactions between the audience and the studio, proving that the goal of activists this entire time has simply been to destroy everything that gamers love. They have never had any love for gaming or the major franchises they ruin. This bothers them. They wanted this success. They believe they have been making games that are this good. They have not. And the only difference is, instead of beautiful characters like Eve, they put in right side of history self-inserts that behave and talk just like themselves. So when you reject that, they take it personally, because they cannot separate the art from the artist. Nobody is ever going to forget and memory hole just how hard journalists tried to destroy this game when it came out twice, and it doesn't help. They're still whining about it. But for them to talk about the success of Stellar Blade, the failure of Veilguard, and completely ignore the game aesthetics because it does not support their warped religion, and then have the absolute gall to complain about content creators who are brainwashing the audience to love beautiful women. Yes, audience, I am using mind rays right now to force you to find women you find attractive to be attractive as well. By listening to my memes-merizing voice, you now find ugly, uncanny, weird-looking Starfield and Veilguard and avowed characters to be, well, ugly, uncanny, and weird. Activists have the absolute lack of self-reflection to call out content creators for the success of games they hate and failure of games they praise for cultural impact, and then complain about ideology being an influence on why gamers like or do not like games? Look in the mirror, journalists. You push this stuff. Whether you want to call it ESG, woke, DEI, bridge, modern audience, nobody cares what you snakes manifest as the new deceitful recalculation of your messaging. It is all the same in the end, and you cannot use your college-learned argumentation and guilt-ridden shaming to convince anyone otherwise anymore. You have overused your only weapon, and now everybody has been naturally vaccinated against you. The reason everyone is intensely aware of all the woke games these days is because of you journalists, games media, because you all kept preaching it since the early 2010s. You kept saying that studios must force in more DEI hires and modern audience ideas for that entire time. And you made people very aware you were doing this as part of your virtue signaling. We are on the right side of history routine. You went out and said you were going to threaten studios, force their HR department to join you for coffee, and make sure if they didn't hire your activist friends, you would ruin their lives. And now everyone knows that DEI took the industry over the exact same time that every one of these franchises and studios started to develop slop. You made sure everyone was going to connect you and your activism to the failure of the entire AAA games industry. So games media, it is over. No time for regrets now, my slimy friends. Content creators who are talking about this right now is not them making up something to get an audience mad at your modern audience ideals. We're responding to something you all did, that the audience was already angry about. Gamers do not go to the internet looking for reasons to be angry about something that they are already enjoying. If anything, people try to avoid negativity around what they love like the plague. Here is the information pipeline that you, journalists you developed. When something goes wrong with a game, gamers will go look for someone, like a journalist, to explain why the Veilguard captures nothing of what they enjoy about Dragon Age Origins, why it completely abandoned over a decade of lore. And when you journalists did not have the answers, when you journalists clearly know nothing of the topic you are talking about, or when you journalists are just telling lies so obvious even a casual, inattentive gamer is able to catch them, gamers went to someone else. This is what happened, journalists. You had it on easy mode, just like every game you review, and you still managed to fail. In honesty, I'm a bit impressed. Like learning how to jump in Cuphead, your capacity for turning the simplest of tasks into one of the fabled labors of Hercules, you inspire me to do worse. Fast forward decades of you doing this, and all this time talking about your ideology, at some point, gamers started to ask, what changed? What changed between when all those franchises we love were good 10 to 20 years ago, and now, when every single franchise is hot garbage? Well, you were the ones who provided the answer. You made it clear what changed. Because you spent that entire era of the enshittification of the gaming industry letting everyone know you were the one changing it and why you were doing it. This journalist, consultant, activist is self-inflicted. And because you spent all that time canceling and backstabbing people, you kept attacking and throwing under the bus people who likely agreed with 70 to 90% of your ideology, you really should not be surprised that everyone is now openly celebrating your entire industry being laid out. You faffoed far too long, and at last, you are finding out. Stellar Blade is a perfect game by your own ideology, except for a single thing: Eve is beautiful. This is by your own admission. This is what you wrote hundreds of articles about, how much you hate her for being beautiful. You accused her of not being real. Then, you were proven wrong by the real woman Eve is modeled after. You accused the studio of being incels and having never met a woman. The studio head is married, the art department is full of women. And take a gander to Twitch and you'll find plenty of ladies streaming the game and drooling over Eve, if anything, more openly than any guy ever has. You did everything you could to make the conversation of this game be about how pretty Eve is. And you made it clear you did so purely due to your own activism. You do not now get to complain that people are talking about this topic. And then, to top it all off, you really thought you could go to gamers and tell them, hey, you need to not enjoy this game because the protagonist is beautiful. That sounds stupid, right? But this way of thinking is endemic in the entertainment industry, the failing entertainment industry. And gamers look at this and they think, if your opinion is this shit on a water is wet take, how bad are journalist opinions on everything else? And it just makes it so comical when you start to cry about content creators. Those woke debates, you were the ones who started them. You were the reason they dominate social media. Because until recently, your so-called woke debates were all that was allowed on social media. Of course, with the caveat that you loved those woke debates back then because it was like having a debate club where every single member is arguing on the same side. Once Twitter suddenly, for some reason, allowed people to disagree with your monologues, like all horrible ideas, we found out they can only exist in an authoritarian echo chamber that permits zero disagreement. And you want to make up reasons for why Veilguard failed that completely dances around the ugly characters and ideology, saying that is not why gamers avoid it. Yet you will also downplay the long list of things Stellar Blade does well that you wanted from gaming, so you can also claim those exact same gamers only played Stellar Blade because hot woman. When anyone picks apart what journalists do, nobody can deny that modern journalists have zero ethics. Zero. It is crazy when in the lead up to Veilguard they are bragging about the woke ideology in it and the changes they made, but as soon as it fails, they start calling it perceived wokeness. Bitch please, there is nothing perceived in these games. You treated wokeness like a selling point for years, proudly advertising it. And again, nobody is gonna let you memory hole this fact that it was you activists advertising all these games as woke the entire time. When you spend the entire media cycle talking about how a game must fail because the protagonist is too beautiful and then it succeeds, and then you spend the next media cycle talking about how a game is stunning and brave because it has surgery scars and is feelings over coffee, zero interesting dialogue choices, a snore fest. Journalists, when you were calling Veilguard a return to form, you seem to forget the original game was not called Dragon Age Oregon. 41% of Stellar Blade mods are smut. Thank you, journalists, for looking into this so heavily. Use this information as you will, random viewer, before Nexus Mods starts banning them all. By the way, same site and same journalist that was proudly gooning over that one famous scene. And just gonna be blunt about this, we have seen what makes you freaks cheer. Would you kindly shut up? Nobody cares, you fuck the bears. So this bear banger wants to whine and guilt you over liking attractive human women who are modeled after a real human woman, that they also want to convince you, since she is beautiful and Korean, they do not consider her human. So much so that for both Black Myth and Stellar Blade, journalists downplayed the success because it was Asians buying the game. Like that means it does not count as real sales? Some journalists, by the way, that will scream and cheer when Ubisoft announced their $200 million Yasuke game managed to sell 2 million activations. These racist baremosexuals also want to imply you will not see heaven for enjoying mods in a game. Look, there might be someone out there who can tell you more about your sins and what will keep you from the gates of heaven, but if I were a gambling man, gonna bet it is not the racist bearphiliac. The most immoral people in the world love to try and shame and guilt you. Never fall for this. Never apologize. Like what you like. And I'd say tell them to go pound sand, but chances are they're into that. Let's not forget, games like The Last of Us 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Veilguard, they have sex. Some have top nudity, some even have full nudity, with different loadouts for your junk. Stellar Blade has no sex, no nudity. As for these culture war flare-ups over the broader player base being hostile, journalists, developers, you started this. You keep going around in social media and calling gamers names, and then playing victim when gamers clap back. You want to keep throwing haymakers without ever getting hit? That's not how it works. And the social media era where there was an echo chamber, and it did work that way in your favor, is a huge part about why people are so angry at you. This is like fighting the Welk at the start of Final Fantasy VI. It might not be able to attack you while it's in its shell, but once it comes out, if you've been whacking it, you're gonna get zapped. Notice how the game devs who go to Twitter with a poll asking, "Hey gamers, what do you want from our games?" are treated like saints? It just takes a little bit of goodwill from developers to get a lot of goodwill from gamers. Trying to wage a war against good-looking visuals was always a losing battle. A battle that you activist journalists, you decided to pick. So no more complaining about how this is a woke debate now. Cosmetics are the #1 seller in games. Nobody is selling an ugly skin. Nobody is gonna gotcha on a loot crate full of unpleasant looking outfits. It has to look good. Not necessarily sexy, but good. This means either one, it is sexy and beautiful, such as Nikke or Love in Deep Space, since both men and women want the same thing. 2, it is cool and stylish, such as skins in most of these FPS games, or sports games where it is someone they look up to like their favorite player. 3, it is comedy. Now, you could sell an ugly comedy skin, something that is pure parody and jokes or memes. Problem is, activists take this so seriously. If they found out one of their ugly looking characters was finally well received, but because people want to clown on that character, it makes them angry, since they were programmed without a sense of humor. Consider the outrage that journalists had over Cyberpunk having the tamest of jokes in it. At the same time, they shilled so hard for Veilguard, but did not put their money behind it, and lost interest in their beloved game at the same time everyone else did. And you will never, in a million years, guess who they are saying is to blame for Veilguard failing. Could it be the developers who made it? The modern audience that begged for it but did not support it? Take a guess. Who do you think the narcissists who have never learned from their mistakes, never taken accountability, and blame everyone else are accusing for its failure? Big shock. The devs are not to blame, they intend not to learn, and everyone else is at fault, except for the people making the game. Media, you have become lol cows. You do realize that, right? The sole purpose of a modern journalist is for other people to bring up what you say and mock you. You are the DSP of the games industry. Though in fairness, DSP probably is a much better gamer. But you know who will never be a better gamer? Like, comment, and subscribe to find out. As for the angry journalists, if any of you see this, you are welcome. Jesters will always be here to point out what you did wrong, and completely for free, I will... Oh, what is that condescending phrase you always use? Oh, right. I will happily educate you. And I apologize for absolutely nothing.